everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us. Today, we will be presenting our Presco solutions, the ingredients that make the difference. So before we start and dive into the presentation, just a few informations. So today, as explained, we'll present you, our experts will present you our Presco solutions. We have today two experts. We have one of our colleague, Eric, key account manager for the bakery, culinary, and nutrition at Limagrain Ingredients, and Rick, the application and technical support for the bakery, culinary, and nutrition here also at Limagrain Ingredients. We will present our Presco solution and end the webinar with a Q&A session. Quick reminders, all the attendees are on mute, but you can ask us all of your questions in the tab questions that's on the right side of your screen. We will answer all the questions at the end of the webinar, but if we don't have the time to answer everything, we'll get back to you personally on your question. And as usual, the presentation will be sent after the webinar. So now let's start and let's discover our solution, and I leave the floor to my colleagues, Rick and Eric.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Aurélie. So welcome to the webinar. And first I will tell you a little bit about how we make these Presco ingredients. So the Presco process is a process that we developed in-house, and it's a process where we use overheated steam and pressure to puff cereals. So what we do, we take the raw material, put it in a puffing vessel, put them under high pressure, and then once we suddenly release the pressure, the products will be pre-cooked and will expand. It's something you can see very clearly in the picture on the right. So you can see the native grain, so unpuffed, very recognizable. And then the bottom picture, you can see that it increased its size, but it's still a very recognizable product. So because of this heat treatment, we also reduce the microbiology level significantly, and we are able to play with these settings in order to create quite a wide range of different ingredients. So let's take a look at the possibilities we have with these Presco ingredients. First, you can already see that we can offer quite a wide range of different raw materials. So we can use different types of cereals. We could use seeds like quinoa or millet, but we can also use malted products, and organic products is also a possibility as a raw material. Then we can offer products in whole or broken. So we can break them before puffing so that you have finer particles. And we can also offer products in a wide range of different densities, ranging from high density to a very low density. So let's take a look at these different densities and their application. So on the left, you see a low density product. So this is very much expanded. It's a very light an airy product with a lot of volume. On the right, you see a similar product, but in this case, it's a high density product. So it's lower in volume, it's more dense and more heavy. Looking at the applications for these products, we can use the low density product, for example, as an inclusion in biscuits. So you can see some cookies here or biscuits with quinoa on the inside. We can use it also as a topping for bread products. And we can use it together with breadcrumbs to create a nice coating around coated foods. Then looking at the high density products, we see those being used more as an inclusion in culinary applications. So for example, in appetizers, as you can see here in the picture. But you can also use them in complete meals. And you can use them as inclusion in bread products, in bakery products. So now I give the floor to Eric, who will tell you a little bit more about the use of Presco in bakery products.
Yeah, good morning all. Thanks, Rick, for your explanation. My name is Erik Lichtenberg, and as a member of the sales team, I'm very happy to tell you a little bit more about the Presco application in bakery products. First of all, it's good to know that we can use our Presco range both as an inclusion and a topping on the bakery in the bakery application. As an inclusion, Presco products will give you in your end products the benefit of a nice soft texture, neutral of taste, and recognizable as a grain. Nutritional benefits as you add a whole grain. I just said neutral of taste, but on the other hand, if you would like to add more taste, we can offer you the Presco malted wheat and the Presco malted rye. Due to the malted process, they add a bit of more flavor to your end product in the inclusion. In the process, the Presco range will give you easy to use products with a low microbiological level and a fast hydration. As a topping, it will give your products a distinctive look that will not discolor during baking and is very cost effective. Now, before we go into the depth about a decoration, I'll just go to the next slide to tell you a little bit more about why would you use Presco as an inclusion, because on the other hand, you could ask yourself, I could also use native grains as an inclusion. Yeah, you could, but to answer that, let's have a look at what is needed in the process if you add native grains to your bread products. You would need to pre-soak your native grains in order to give them the nice texture you desire in your end and baked end products. This pre-soaking step would take several hours with microbiological risk, and you need additional equipment, time to weigh, space to pre-soak, storage, etc. If we look at our Presco range, you end up with a nice texture to your end product without the pre-soaking step. Of course, the kneading, shaping, fermentation is exactly the same as with a regular bread product production. You add the Presco product directly to the flour, or the Presco is already incorporated into a baking mix. As the Presco is a dry ingredient, you have a better control of your dough consistency and dough temperature because it's not pre-soaked. And pre-soaking during the winter, for example, you have to store it in a little bit more warm environment, but in the summer you have to store it in a cold environment. So adding this Presco as a dry ingredient directly to the flour, you have a better dough consistency and better dough temperature control. All in all, adding Presco means that you do not need to take the unnecessary steps to pre-soak the products or the native grains. You do not need the additional equipment, and therefore it's cost saving, and you add more control to your dough processing. I was just telling a little bit about quick hydration. Well, maybe it's good to tell you a little bit more about that. On this slide, you see on the right a chart. This chart represents native spelt and a Presco dinkel spelt. Presco dinkel is the same as Presco spelt. What you see here is that native spelt needs an overnight pre-soaking to obtain 50 grams per 100 grams of moisture uptake. That's also the maximum amount of moisture uptake a spelt kernel can have. For a Presco product, you see that the same amount of hydration is obtained under 50 minutes. So during the mixing step, our Presco products will obtain the maximum amount of water. So therefore, you do not end up with a dry product, but with a nice soft texture. Because we have a pre-cooked kernel, this will withstand the mixing process, and you end up with a beautiful kernel that is recognizable in your end product. So in all, you win quite a lot of time on water absorption savings. So far for the Presco as an inclusion, but I told you before, you can also add the Presco range as a decoration. Why would you use our Presco products as a decoration? Well, because it will make your products more distinctive. It will give a nice crunch to your fresh baked products. It will not discolor during baking, and you will add nutritional value to your end products. Also very important that Presco decorations results in a low cost in use. And that is because less Presco is needed to completely cover a piece of dough compared to other decorations. That is because, as you can see in this chart, we have the Presco Dutch quinoa, the Presco millet, and the Presco brown rice. Those are the references that we see fit as a product for decoration. Those are completely puffed, very low in density, very airy, so very light. So you need not that much to cover a completely piece of dough. And even though the price per kilo from our Presco products is slightly higher compared to other decorations, the cost in use is way lower. Maybe it's good for Rick to tell you a little bit more about some applications.
Thanks a lot, Erik. So here we have a recipe of what we call a heavy type of bread. So it's a very dense, rustic type of bread. And if you look at the control recipe, you can see that we use a different variety of cereals. And by doing so, we need to pre-soak those cereals in order to get the desired texture in the end after baking. If you wouldn't pre-soak these kernels, they would be very hard and simply unedible in the final product. So in order to get them in the right state, we need to add 15% of pre-soaking water and wait at least 18 hours for the kernels to completely hydrate. When we move to Presco products, you can see that we have no pre-soaking at all. Instead of adding the water in advance, we just add it during mixing, and then it will hydrate during mixing, and you will end up with a very nice and soft kernel. Besides the time-saving aspect, this also gives you more flexibility to create different batch sizes or to make more product if needed. Then looking at the products that are used in this type of bread. So we use 3 different types of Presco. The first one is Presco malted rye, which gives a very nice and distinctive flavor. Then we use Presco dinkel Z, which also has a nice fiber content to it. And then finally, we have the Presco durum wheat, which is nice and light and really stands out in the dark crumb of this bread. Then looking at the next application. So here are the biscuits again, and you can see that we used our Presco Dutch quinoa as an inclusion this time. And combining it with a chocolate biscuit in this case really helps it stand out. You can see that you only need 4% in order to have quite a lot of inclusion in this product, and that's just because the product is very light. And because it's so light, you will obtain a very nice and crispy texture after baking. So this was a little bit about bakery. I will give the floor back to Erik, and he can tell something about culinary.
Hi Rick, yeah, thank you for explanation of the different recipes. Dear attendees, I would like to tell you a little bit more about our Presco products in the culinary applications. Because our Presco products in culinary applications will give your products a nice texture without affecting the taste. That will give you recognizable grains in your end products that add to a better nutritional value as you add the whole grains. Meanwhile, the Presco products have a low microbiological level due to the puffing process. Because of this process, they obtain the water faster and reduce the cooking time compared to native grains. Of course, you might ask yourself, well, how's that been done? Well, here you see on this slide, on the left, the native grains, and on the right, the Presco products. The native grains need a long cooking time to have the desirable texture for your end products. Due to the puffing process, the Presco time faster than native grains. And compared to native grains, the Presco products absorb 2.5 times faster the moisture in the same amount of cooking time. This is resulting in a culinary Presco product that is process resistant and has a better mouthfeel compared to native grains. Because you can add the Presco products directly to your recipe and use less cooking time, it saves energy and time, and therefore Presco is a cost-effective product. It's also good to mention that due to our flexible puffing process, we can match the cooking time that you desire or need. I was just telling you a little bit about the water intake. It was faster, 2.5 times faster than with native grains. On this chart, you see exactly the same. You see the dotted lines from the spelt grains and the wheat grains, native grains, the orange and the green one. After 16 minutes of cooking time, they obtained approximately 90 grams of water. Our Presco products, after a maximum of cooking time of 10 minutes, they obtained quite a lot of water, more than the native grains. So again, a higher water absorption in the same cooking time, a reduced cooking time compared to the native grains, therefore cost saving in terms of energy and labor costs. Maybe it's good for Rick to tell a little bit more about the applications.
Okay, thank you, Eric. So for this next example, we'll be taking a look at a short grain sushi rice, which is a very nice product, which brings a very nice texture because of the roundness of the kernels. But the only problem is it isn't very high in fiber. Well, we could come up with a solution by using brown rice, for example. And we double the amount of fiber, but then at the same time, we will have twice the cooking time. So we need to cook much longer. And at the same time, we will lose the nice texture. It will be more dry and grainy. And also the color will be very different. It will be more light brown compared to the bright white you will get with sushi rice. An easy solution to that is to add 30% of puffed spelt to our sushi rice. And by doing so, so by taking out 30% of sushi rice or short grain rice and including 30% of spelt in the recipe, we will get more fiber than we do with brown rice. As Eric mentioned, we can match the cooking time of that of the sushi rice in this case. So we have still the same short cooking time. Because we have a very nice and round kernel, we will have a very good texture. So the kernels of the spelt completely blend in with the kernels of the sushi rice in this case. And instead of having a white or light brown color, we will have a very bright white color together with a natural brown color, which really makes it stand out. In this case, for example, you can make a very nice poke bowl. You can increase the fibers and have a better nutritional value. So you can increase the Nutri-Score without the loss of texture, without the longer cooking time, and with a nice appealing color to it. Another example of how you can use our Presco products in culinary applications is in finger food or appetizers, for example. So here we have what we call a granotto ball. So it's our take on kind of a risotto snack, but then based on different grains. And that's why it's being called a granotto ball. So in this filling, we use different cereals together with a creamy filling to create a lot of texture. And we use 3 different types. So in this case, we use our Presco barley 470, Presco durum wheat, and Dinkelzee again. And the reason for that is that these products have slightly different bulk densities and also give a slightly different texture, but also color in the final product. So it brings some more variety. And in these products, the Presco is mainly responsible for the chewiness, the bite you will find in these type of products. But you can also see that Presco is not only used on the inside. You can also use Presco on the outside. So on the outside, you see a combination of breadcrumbs with our Presco broken brown rice, which is a broken brown rice. And it blends very well with the breadcrumbs. And it's also very light. Therefore, you get a very light, airy and crispy texture to the product. So to sum it up, with our Presco products, you have a very nice, natural, clean label ingredient that can be very cost effective. It can be a product that can give a very nice texture to bakery and culinary applications. Also, if you use it as an inclusion, it's still very recognizable as grain. It looks natural. It's based on whole grain. It can be used in a lot of different processes. It's very suitable for that, and also brings some benefits when you look at the cooking time, for example. So again, I would like to thank you for joining this webinar, and I hope this webinar gave you some inspiration, and that you now know that Presco really are the ingredients that can make the difference.
Okay, thank you very much, Rick and Eric, for all of this information. It was very insightful and interesting to know how we could use our Presco in different applications. So now it's time for the Q&A session. We have received a few questions. Let's start with the first one. The first one is it possible to use the Presco solution as inclusions? Can you use all of the solutions, as inclusions in bread or pastry products? I think, Rick.
Yeah, I think that's a question for me. So what we see, if we look at pastry, for example, and then biscuits, it's usually better to use low-density products as an inclusion. And then for bread, it's kind of the opposite. So for all bread applications, we generally use high-density products. If you were to use a low-density product, you will get a lot of hydration of the kernel, and you will lose some of its interesting texture in the final product. So high density, mainly for bread inclusions, and then pastry, and then specifically biscuits, low density products that can provide some crispiness. But there's always different types of product. For example, malted products are more high density, but they can still work very nicely in biscuits. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Rick. So let's move on to the next question. So can we use these products in other applications like cereal bars?
Yes, you can. These products are also being used a lot in cereal bars, of course, but also breakfast cereals. And then, for example, in cereal bars, light products can be very nice. In baked cereal bars, if you cover them with a little bit of honey, you will get a very nice crispy texture. But also other products could be very interesting as well. So they are very suitable for cereal bars as well.
Thank you very much. So next question, I think Rick or Eric, you'll be able to answer, but do we offer pre-cooked quinoa?
Yeah, it depends on how you look at what pre-cooked quinoa is, because all our Presco products are pre-cooked essentially because of the plouging process. So it doesn't matter if it's low density or high density; they are completely pre-cooked. The only difference is that with quinoa, for example, it's a product that either puffs or it doesn't. So we are slightly more limited compared to other ingredients with different bulk densities. So the only product we can offer when it comes to quinoa is low density, so a very light and airy product.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question. So when using Presco grains, do we need to adjust our process?
It depends. Usually it will simplify the process. Like Eric mentioned, for example, in bakery applications, there's no pre-soaking needed. So you will have to change something if you are used to pre-soaking. For culinary, you might have to shorten the process because it doesn't need that much cooking time. So it will fit in all the processes, which you do need to adapt.
Thank you very much, Rick. Another question is, could this product being used as fat substitute in low-fat products?
That's an interesting question. So in general, generally we don't use it for fat substitution in low-fat products. However, in some products it can of course bring more volume to the product. And we just had the example of cereal bars, for example. So it can be a bulk ingredient which offers a lot of volume, make the process of the product bigger without adding too many calories. If you look at fat reduction, and we also offer a wide range of functional flours, and that's where we typically use our those are the products we typically use to reduce fat.
Thank you very much. And I think we have time for one last question. And that question is, do you have more products that could be used as toppings?
Well, we saw a few in the presentation. For example, the Dutch quinoa, the millet, and the broken brown rice. We also have organic versions of those available. Those are very light products with a small particle size, so they can be very nice as a topping, also combined with a breadcrumb. But then again, other products, maybe slightly larger in size, could still be used as a topping. It's really depending on your needs. And also something to remember is that we're always willing to look into a specific request if you need something slightly different.
Thank you very much, Rick and Eric.
You're welcome.
This is the end of our Q&A session and also the end of our webinar. We would like to thank you all for attending and joining us today to discover and learn more about our Presco solutions. As explained at the beginning, we will send you all the webinar presentation as well as the replay link to see again this webinar. Thank you all for joining and have a good day.
Have a nice day.